channel. Now, our special guest today spent most of his time not just behind the camera, but holding the camera. MotorWeek videographers easily have the hardest job of the MotorWeek staff, not only braving humid summers and brisk winters, but capturing vehicles at high speeds and corners. Believe me, it's no easy task. It requires a carefully honed expertise that our guest was known for since he shot our show for 34 years. Welcome to our podcast, Ray Kawata, the one and only. Welcome, Ray.
It's great to be here, John. I wanted to congratulate everybody there for making it to 45. I remember when we, in 83, no, I guess it was 87 when they actually put the year number on the show. We all made jokes about working on '08, and we did. And you're still working on it.
Yeah, it's been an amazing run, and it's hard for me to believe that you moved out to Colorado in 2016. It seems like only yesterday, almost everything that happens around here, we look at each other and say, how would Ray handle that? But it's been a happy retirement for you, and it's just great to see you. But I want to take you back to the earliest days. And my recollection is that you started working with us in the summer or spring of 1982. So we were finishing up our first season, starting to shoot our second season. What do you remember about those times?
Well, I remember very vividly our very first shoot with you was probably with Michael Goldsmith. And we were shooting on Hilltop Drive somewhere down there in Baltimore County and doing stand-ups for I guess, the open of the second season. And, a bunch of us did work on the show. And back then, it really wasn't in the videography unit. It was part of the field recording unit. We had Ikagamis, which were our cameras, but they were umbilical to a box, the tape recorder. And we usually had a really big crew, usually an engineer and grips and all sorts of stuff there. So it was a lot of people involved in those early shoots.
I mean, we also, I believe, had audio engineers at that time. I mean, it's a lot different today than where we basically go out with, the shooter has to do just about everything. It was a much bigger production.
Yes, it was quite a bit. And I remember, I guess it was 83 when we first started to go up to do the full lineups at the manufacturers, which was unprecedented, I think, as far as access to the proving grounds up there. I think Bill Van Etten and Jack Thanum were actually still shooting at that time, but I was tapped to go along and, help out as part of the crew there. And it was a pretty big crew. And I think we spent a lot of time at every place we went.
Yeah, that for those that are familiar with those early shows, every summer, what Ray's referring to is we would go to Detroit for a week, and we called it Hell Week. And we would go from one manufacturer to another at all their proving grounds. They would bring out everything that was new for the next model year. And we literally had an assembly line going all day for like 5 days straight. And very often, Ray would be strapped in the back of a vehicle doing car-to-car shots. And I remember we came up with a helicopter harness for you, I think, to make sure you were safe.
Well, it was to make sure I didn't fall out.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't putting a fine point on it.
That was kind of unprecedented. I think the print media was a little bit jealous because as we kind of the trust evolved. I remember at one time in the very early days, somebody drove a prototype out, which of course we weren't supposed to see. And they got all upset and had us all facing the walls and turning off the cameras and everything like that. And I kept thinking to myself, well, they control this whole situation. They know that if we shoot something we're not supposed to and air it, we won't be asked back. But anyway, it evolved to the point where I think it was the last time we were at Dearborn. We were there at the same time that something was going on at Belle Isle. And so they even just sent in a freelance PR person to kind of oversee our shoot while all the bigwigs were at Belle Isle. And when we got ready to go, the security gate would not open. It was one of those like the toll booth, and the arm comes down and it stays down. So we took my trusty toolkit and we took the arm off of the gate and drove all of the cars out and then put the arm back on. I can't imagine what security thought about that footage.
Well, as I recall, it's funny, I'd completely forgotten about that, but we sat there for quite a while. We couldn't get anybody to help us. It was, there was nobody around. And, I don't think I ever heard back from anybody there about that incident, but that was pretty unique. And the Dearborn Proving Ground, which is part of Ford Motor Company, I remember it was right next to Greenfield Village, which is an American heritage, a village of classic and important buildings like Edison's Menlo Park Laboratory. And they would do reenactments of, I guess, military battles there, whatever it was. There were always guns going off that we had to stop for. Remember that?
I do remember we were trying to do a stand-up there, and every time you got about 5 seconds in, there would be another volley somewhere. Sounded like we were in a war zone. I think it must have taken us 30-some takes to get through that one.
Oh, speaking of takes, because we had different equipment in those days, and we used, of course, videotape versus disc or solid medium, the quality was very suspect at times, especially when you were doing outside broadcasts. So you'd do a great take, then you'd look at it back, and it would have a glitch or something. And I remember you were and always have been a perfectionist, and even we wouldn't see some things sometimes, but Ray Kawata saw it, and we would do it again.
Well, television, it's got to look good. Another time we were trying to do a stand-up, we were at Bowling Green at the Corvette factory.
Oh, no.
And the wind just picked up like you wouldn't believe. And you're standing there, your pants legs are flapping in the wind. And it looked like you were trying to do the stand-up on the bow of a cigarette boat.
It's like all those reporters you see now standing out in the middle of a hurricane. It was pretty close to that.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great
memory. Could have worked
memory.
for the Weather Channel.
Yeah. Do you remember how you ended up working with us so much? Because you weren't originally assigned to us basically full time. You later were, but did you like us that much, or was it just the luck of the draw?
Well, I think in the early going, everything was pretty much studio based. And I came from a background where I worked for WXLT TV in Florida, where basically you did everything. And so I was kind of the guy who shot most of the commercials. And so I would go out in the field, single camera shoots all the time. So I think that kind of helped bring me to the fore as far as experience went, because virtually everybody else, and I was actually hired on as a camera operator. I think all of us were at the time, but it was mostly studio based. So that kind of helped out. Plus, I think we did a lot of shooting during Fridays, which was, of course, Wall Street.
Right, busy day.
So a lot of the crews who had already been doing Wall Street for a very long time were assigned to that. And so by default, you got me.
Lucky us. But I wonder that since today cameras obviously are so small, you hold it in the palm of your hands, a lot of our fans don't realize the difference between a big studio camera and basically a field camera that you have on your shoulder. Did you have any trouble going back and forth between the two? I mean, what were the differences in those days? And those cameras weighed like 70, 80 pounds.
Well, the cameras for the studio are all pretty much on a pretty solid tripod, and you can kind of move the tripod on wheels around the studio. And usually the focus and the zooms were on the handles, and then you had a big viewfinder up top that you would look up into, and in my case, look up. But anyway, so you were looking to basically a small monitor. Now with the field cameras, they were smaller, so you would kind of walk around with it and then put up a field tripod to wherever you wanted it to be, attach the camera, and you're looking through a viewfinder through an eyepiece, and everything else is pretty much on the lens or a zoom grip and so forth. So it did take a little bit of going back and forth and remembering where you were and where your controls were. But like I said, I had a lot of background of doing that in Florida when I was working there, and then that translated pretty well to working in the field recording units up there. And then eventually we graduated to an actual videography unit with units there as things became less and less studio based.
And speaking of that, let's, trying to shoot cars at speed takes a very, very special set of skills. Can you kind of give us an idea of what it was like when you were first exposed to shooting cars like on a racetrack? Because we do a great deal of that. And it's not just a matter of holding a car in frame. You've got to do just about everything to keep it in focus, to follow, you name it. So getting away from shooting still life or one person like me in front of a camera, making that transition to a racetrack, what was that like? And do you have any great memories of anything there that maybe didn't go as planned or whatever?
And it took quite a bit of concentration. You really had to concentrate on what you were doing a lot more so. And a lot of times when you were working in the studio, you kind of glance around the camera to just kind of see where everybody else is. You take your eye off the car there, and pretty much it's out of frame pretty soon. So it took quite a bit of concentration to really kind of hone those skills. Following focus was you really had to stay on it all the time and make sure you could follow it from wherever it started in your frame to when it exited, and that was probably one of the tougher things to do.
Why don't you give our fans an idea of what it was like when we would go every year to Savannah, outside of Savannah, to Roebling Road Raceway? We'd go down with about a dozen cars. We have this 2-mile track to ourselves for 3 or 4 days. That was always an enormous challenge for the videographers, and usually you'd be there with at least one other videographer. But give us an idea from your perspective what that experience was like.
Well, the first thing was packing for the trip. And when you have to take and like you said, after I think 87, we started going with two videography units down there. But making sure you had what you needed, because once you got there, if you didn't have it and you needed it, you were kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
And there was a lot to do, like you were talking about. I mean, there was almost a full day of stand-ups. Then there was a lot of work on every car, because most of the time this was during the winter. Usually the first one anyway was during the winter. And so we wouldn't have done a whole lot of the statics on the cars before that. And by statics, I mean like the exteriors of the car and the interiors of the car. Then we would also need to show these cars in real life driving situations. So there's the drive-bys to have. That's a whole nother set of variables there, because you had to find a road that had enough character to it, and by that I mean curves and so forth, that you could string together a bunch of drive-bys to talk about how it drives just on normal everyday drives. Then you get down to the track, and you needed to stay far enough off the track that you weren't going to be a hazard, or the cars would run you over. We don't want that. So
Nope.
we had a number of places to find around the track to show the car at speed. I mean, obviously, the straightaway is going to be, a lot of the acceleration and so forth. So there'd be cars or camera positions at either end of the straightaway. We had a number of really nice curves that showed how the car would handle at speed and going around the corners. A couple of S-bends to show it going from one side and then back the other. So, and then, since each of these drive-bys on the track are usually pretty darn quick, you need a number of them.
Yeah.
So we would be going around and around the track and finding different places. And, after a number of years, we would have a lot of these places kind of mapped out, and we would kind of know where to go the next time.
But
yeah, it was a lot of work.
But while you were shooting, so another videographer would also be shooting, and we're trying at a different part of the track, and we had to coordinate all of that. And that was, walkie-talkies, and you might get your shot, but the other videographer might need one more time around the track. And then what would you do?
Well, we would usually, if I was done at a particular place and say Dave Hunter or whomever was still shooting, I might start packing up my gear as long as I'm in a safe place and can get to my support vehicle to get ready for the next one. And then we would listen on the radio for the all clear sign when Dave was finished and the track was clear. Then we would move to the next location and start all over again. But one of the other things was it was imperative that in the pits,
Yep,
that they space the cars correctly too, because if they were running up too far or too close to the car ahead of them, we might miss a shot just because we're on one car and then the next car is already in frame before we can get back to the start of that particular thing. So that was another element that had to be coordinated as well. And after a while, we were kind of, these things started to be very, very smoothly done.
but it did take intense choreography between you and whoever was in the pits and making sure it all stayed safe.
And for who knows what reason, it always seemed like we'd start off, with a list of 10 cars and end up with a list of 15 or something.
Yeah, Brian Roberts would outdo himself with getting a lineup of cars for future shows that and we had only a few days to shoot them all. Another kind of shooting you used to do all the time was taking your camera on the road to press events. And when you started doing that, you were really the only TV camera person on these events. And you must have had some amazing experiences. I know you did with me, but with other folks on the staff as well, as some of the places you got to go and some of the adventures in shooting cars at these press events. Any of those kind of pop into your mind as, oh my, I can't believe we did that, or whatever?
Well, we tended to get this reputation as for getting stopped by security people here and there, especially in California.
Yeah.
The police would come by and they would want to see your permit. And of course, oftentimes we didn't, because we didn't know where we were going to be on these shoots. They were all kind of controlled by the manufacturers. So there were a couple of times, and I think it was Brian Robinson and I were shooting a Yamaha Roadstar road test with Yamaha, and they put us on a stretch of road that apparently went right through a state park in California. So we were shooting along the road, and California rangers stopped by and wanted to see permits and stuff. And I was trying to explain that I didn't have permits because we didn't know where we were going to be and so forth. And Brian's on the other side waiting for me to talk to him on the radio. And lo and behold, while we're sitting there, Brian Roberts drives by and stops because he's on another press preview in a Mercedes-Benz, which did not help my case at all, by the way. So Brian Robinson and I got hauled off to the state park offices, and they read us the riot act about permits and all this sort of stuff. And finally, the secretary, after they got finished browbeating us, the secretary kind of said, you might want to think about this road here. So we went up into the mountains and finished our road test there.
That's a great one.
It's probably not as much of a inconvenience as when Scriv and I were in Norway shooting a Volvo.
No, yeah.
And we were as far north. I mean, we were above the Arctic Circle. Why Volvo wanted to shoot there in the dead of winter? Because it was December and it was very, very cold. But we were shooting basically along the Russian border. And, we were, of course, the first ones out there. I drove out to start the statics long before the rest of the press crew came out that way. And Dave caught up with me later. But after we shot all the statics and we were doing drive-bys and all, we finally finished up. And you remember, this is December in Norway, north of the Arctic Circle, so there's not a whole lot of sunlight anyway. And we're getting ready to pack up, and we look down the road, and this truck pulls off across the road and stops. And we're thinking, uh-oh, did he get stuck? Because that's our only way out. And Dave kind of looks a little bit farther, and the doors open, and two soldiers get out, and he's like, no, they're waiting for us. So we got down there, and they said that we had violated some agreement with Russia. It was the Norwegian Border Patrol. So they took us off to the Norwegian Border Patrol offices, and fortunately, we had these jackets that were emblazoned with Volvo on the back, so they knew kind of what we were doing there. And one of the officers who spoke more English than the others watched our video, suggested a few edits because we thought, well, we'll set the scene. Here's the river, and that across the way is Russia. Well, apparently we shot a Russian outpost, which is Verboten in that area. So anyway, we had to do a few edits on that, and they finally let us go. The rest of the press corps was having a lot of fun at our expense at dinner that night, but we did point out we did save the shoot. So we did get it done.
Always come back with the shoot. Hey, speaking of the Arctic Circle, and it was kind of unrelated to MotorWeek, but you also spent time in Antarctica. And you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because that had to be an experience of a lifetime too.
That was quite the experience at I think it was, 88. Yeah, it was 1988. So at Thanksgiving of 87, our videography head came to us with this and said that there's going to be a documentary shot in Antarctica, and we'd like to know by the following Monday if you'd be interested. So, a number of us expressed interest in it, and they picked a crew. It was Frank Leung and myself, And they said, "Now you can't tell anybody about this at this point in time until, it's pretty much time to go." So unfortunately, that kind of left you guys in the lurch for a bit. But on, I think it was New Year's Day,
Yeah.
we set off to do the Antarctic um, documentary, and it was kind of open-ended. They weren't really sure how long we'd be there. And we were traveling on a Greenpeace ship because they would go to as many Antarctic research stations as possible. The whole idea was the Antarctic Treaty was going to be up for kind of review shortly after we got back, and that's why they wanted to do this particular uh, documentary. It was a lot of work. It was very cold. Our cabin on board the ship was just above the freshwater tanks, which froze. And if you stood in the cabin, head level was about where the water level was on the hull.
Oh
So it
my.
was very cold. But while we were down there, we also had an opportunity to do an ice-breaking mission with the U.S. Coast Guard. The icebreaker Polar Star was in there, and we thought, well, okay, this will be kind of interesting. So we show up at the rendezvous, and of course, it's Greenpeace personnel are dropping us off at this place, and I thought, I wonder how that's going to go over with the U.S. Coast Guard, because their environmental, well, not environmental, but maybe their kind of viewpoints aren't exactly on schedule. And we thought, well, we might not be able to get a whole lot of access on the ship because they think we're Greenpeace. So we were trying to make a point. We're not Greenpeace. We're traveling with Greenpeace, but we are Maryland Public Television. And so Frank, when we were introduced to the captain, and first I thought we aren't going to get anywhere here. Frank happened to mention that we were Maryland Public Television, and his eyes kind of light up. And Frank went on to say that I shot for MotorWeek, and boy, that opened a lot of doors. This guy was a real fan, and he was Seattle based. So I guess we were on the air in Seattle at the time, but we that couldn't have been a better introduction to get us around and access to different parts of the ship. We even got up into the loft con, where a couple of guys that I would have thought were teenagers were driving the ship on the ice breaking mission. So it was pretty cool.
Boy, you never know where MotorWeek's going to open the doors. That's a great
Yeah.
story. I know I've probably asked you this before, but if you had just two or three, you've already mentioned Norway, but other memorable events, either good or bad, while you were on the show for 34 years. I mean, that's an amazing career. What is there anything else that pops into your mind?
Well, I mean, I was lucky enough to work with almost all the reporters. I think all the reporters up till 2016 anyway. And we had some really amazing shoots and stuff. And I think the series of shoots I did with Lisa Barrow in England really had quite a lot of humorous events in there that we just kind of laughed about and continue to do so over the years. But the big one was the Land Rover jungle course that we were doing a story on. And we show up there, and we had packed as much kind of bad weather gear as we could think of, because the jungle course is just pretty much that. Even though it's in England, I mean, there's a lot of boggy areas and swampy stuff. And the guy from Land Rover took one look at our footwear and said, "Nah, that won't do. You guys need to go out and get some wellies." So we went out and got some wellies, and good thing we did. I mean, wellies come up almost to your knees, and I was in mud almost up to my knees. But for lunchtime, we went to East Nor Castle,
Yep.
which is on the estate. And the gentleman who was the owner of the castle there was Major Harvey Bathurst. You'd think this guy had been delivered by Central Cast. But anyway, he followed Lisa around during lunch, and whatever she took, he would always. The joke was, well, it would go much better with a splash of brandy. And he'd splash some brandy on her food. I was surprised she was even capable of standing, after lunch. But yeah, then we slogged around in the mud a lot, and at one point there were a lot of wildlife. There were deer and pheasants all over the place, and someone on the crew asked them, well, do you hunt the pheasants here? And one of the guys from Land Rover goes, hardly sporting. You pretty much got to shake him off the end of your gun.
I think your accents for putting the exclamation mark on the story.
But the funniest thing of that whole thing, though, is when we got back and, we're turning in our expense accounts and all this sort of stuff. Lisa gets this call from the finance office. She goes down there. Why? Because they wanted to know why Lisa bought rubbers for Ray. And expensive ones, too. Oh, yeah, that was fun.
Oh, what a great story to wrap up the podcast with. You had so many wonderful experiences. I got to tell you, we just miss having your smile and your incredible work ethic around. It was and continues to be a great inspiration for all of us. And this podcast, the reason we're doing it on video is so we've got this for a long time. So wrapping it up, anything else you'd like to say?
Well, it's snowing out there. We've got about 10 inches of snow here. And right about now, if I was there and you were here, the call would go out for snowy drive-bys.
That's right. Never miss an opportunity. Never miss an opportunity. Ray, thanks very much. Thanks for joining us on this podcast. And I hope you and Jen just continue to thrive out there in Colorado. And, who knows? Maybe we'll get you back on here for another podcast even before our next major anniversary. It's any stories you've got, I think would just be everybody would love to hear.
Well, we just scratched the surface, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If anybody, I did see Scrivener here a couple of years ago. I think he was out somewhere doing something near Boulder or whatever. And Jen and I drove down to see him. But, if anybody's out this way, just let us know. Thanks,
Ray Kawata. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today. And everybody out there, I want to thank our sponsors. That's a very important aspect that I need to do for not only our podcast, but also everything Motor Week. Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and the fine folks over at TireRack.com. Thank you very much, and everybody associated with our product, thanks you for being so dedicated to Motor Week. And by the way, if you're wondering what time Motor Week can be seen on your local public television station, hop over to our website, MotorWeek.org, click on the tab Watch Motor Week, and then enter your zip code and day for the days and times in your area. One more thing, I want to remind everyone listening about our Motor Week app. It's a free download. All of our Motor Week information and video is there. It's available at your favorite app store. And so take it with you, and you'll never miss a mile of Motor Week. For the podcast today, special thanks to podcast producer Jessica Ray, audio engineer Nicole Phillips-Naylor, and podcast creator Bob Mixter. And remember, for the fastest way to find car reviews, be sure to include Motor Week in your search engine. I'm John Davis. Thanks for being a part of Motor Week.
You've been listening to the podcast of Motor Week, television's original automotive magazine. Motor Week is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. Visit our website at MotorWeek.org for more car reviews and the latest automotive news. And watch Motor Week, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station or the Motor Week app.